Good day, all. Good day, Grand Rising. Welcome, Andrea, Angela. Welcome to Kristal and Anita. Here we are, the three of us gathered and giggling a bit, and also just noticing, wow, the Mercury retrograde is still fully with us, and also that full supermoon energy fully with us. We were like struggling to get the tech working this morning, but we're here. And
so happy to be here.
Welcome to everybody. How are you feeling, Anita?
I'm feeling pretty good this morning, but I have been on that roller coaster along with you guys.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So we've got a question here from Angela already. Good morning. Good day, wherever you're tuning in from. Ladies, could you draw on our narcissistic people, Npc's? Also, are people with no empathy Npc's? Wow. Okay.
So who wants to clarify Npc's for the collective here?
Non-player characters as developed through video games, because this connection that we talk about between the Matrix and is this a game, or what kind of crazy game is this? Why would we even entertain engaging in such an endeavor? On the other side, we get the philosophizing around, we're choosing this, we've planned all this, and it's like, why would we do that? Of course, it doesn't feel like a game when we're in the seriousness of it. However, we can make it lighter by laughing sometimes at how ridiculous and crazy it gets, and people do definitely seem like Npc's. Like, what is that gap? And I feel right away we all have our gaps. We can all be Npc's in certain areas, because when we get stressed and overwhelmed, we can freeze and appear like a non-player character. And for even further, like for someone who's really never heard of Npc's, they're the characters in a video game who are pre-programmed. This was shown really well in the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, where it breaks that wall in between. But what it's supposed to be is you go into a store and you ask for something, and that character has a pre-programmed response. It's like, how's the weather today? Or what do you like? It's not novel. They don't bring novel thinking in. And so those of us that feel we're awake and aware and are not Npc's sometimes feel like we get that in our faces. It's like, are these literally just programmed into the Matrix as filler people? Or what, like I already acknowledged, is this something about we all have gaps in different areas? Our blind spots are hard to see. So when I pulled on this, I got right away, which was beautiful, trust your vibes. So bringing discernment to each moment when we're tuning in, and then we can take it deeper. And there we go. We can take it deeper by looking at the narcissistic people part of the question, and still trusting our vibes, right? Is this someone who is, again, their trauma is just putting them in a certain default mode, and so it feels like they're just pre-programmed responses because that is what they've been shown. I feel like we're going to have a little bit of both. It'll be interesting to see what you pull on it, but what it reminds me of is this really, I was going to say delicate or taboo, but those aren't quite the words, but the subject of AI, right? Like AI, they try to have AI learning, and can AI learn empathy? And how would that be taught? Because it connects to that next part of the question. Or can empathy be learned? And it's very complicated. I guess complicated and complex are really more part of it, whether we're talking about a real person, NPC, or whether we're talking about machine learning or AI. That's quite the mystery of whether that can be learned or programmed. But let's get into it a little bit more with what you
Okay.
pulled up.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mystic Mimi and Ethan. Aw, hello.
Yay. Kristal, you want to have the first round at it?
No.
Oh, okay then. Well, interesting that the first card that comes up for us is a card that when we're talking about personality and our ability to have empathy and things related to, I guess, like our soul, this card in this case, I mean, it can be a money card, but in this case, it's also related to family and ancestry. So the first thing that I'm getting is that we are basically a product of at least the last 7 generations. I'm hearing, really the ancestral lineages that have been programmed in this matrix style go back, from the research I've done, about 9,000 to 10,000 years. So we have a program that's been running that has been about basically co-opting the naturalness of the human experience, which is empathy, it's love, it's connection to all of nature, the world, that reverence, not needing to dominate, not needing to own things or people or land. And it's so far back. It's been going on for a really, really, really long time. And it's almost like it's come to the end. Look at this 9 of Swords in the advice. It's sort of like playing out the dystopian end game. Like, this is where you go with that. What I understood about what happened about 10,000 years ago is that there was an experiment to experience separate self-identity and say, I don't need God, I don't need source creator, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to have this huge ego develop, and it's all going to be about power and dominating the environment and each other. And so that is something we did as a collective, as a human collective. We engaged in that, and it's very, very mind oriented, right? So we go along this. And for about 8,000 years, it just was like tickety boo, right? It's like it was just going along, doing its thing. And then in the last 2,000 years, interesting is what I'm hearing, to the last 2,000 years, when we think about Christ consciousness coming onto the planet, we've gone into the age of Pisces. And now we're in the deep shadow work. What happens when you, as an ego, disconnect from source? Well, in the beginning, it might feel like, yeah, we got it going on. We're like, who needs God? We're like, and it was all about learning about who we are. It was all about learning about our individuality. The end result, when you go to the dead end at the end of that experiment, is we got to come back to source, right? It's sort of like, well, that was a great learning experience or a really tragic, traumatizing learning experience, but there's no escaping that we're connected. We're connected to source. So the return is, we are in the last chapter, the last page of the last chapter of that story of that. Yay! And so the question, NPCs that have no empathy, well, that's where you end up. We've been gathering this experience, and it's been programmed through work, right? Like, how do we make money? Material. Like, how do we survive? And how do we, like, it's all been about the 8 of Pentacles in the past here. It's all been about work. But in the last 2,000 years, it's become, we're in the shadow. We're in the shadow work. You can't just dominate and, separate yourself from source indefinitely. You end up running out of real energy, and then it's all siphoning. So I guess I'm seeing, we are definitely in the end of that. And can it be taught? Oh, of course, as Anita said too, the AI piece is the kind of, we're at the crossroads where we could either go further into separation and then we lose most of our humanity, or we come back into the heart, we come back into the feelings. And to do that, we have to go through all the trauma. So
I have something to say.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
My turn. Yeah, really with this Three of Pentacles and this Knight of Cups here made me think about it and some of the experiences that I've been having lately in connecting with narcissistic behavior. And I see the way that people respond to it. And my first response to it is just to like run as fast from that as I can get. And yet that is the separate self that is acting out again. And what I see is like a lot of people sort of being like, well, I don't want to get involved and I don't want to get in the middle and I'm going to pick sides and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, how about what we actually do is all come together and call in source, right? Because any relationship, as we've talked about, is a relationship of thirds. You have you, the other, and spirit that plays its part. And can we actually, rather than chastising or shaming or removing these people from our reality because they challenge us in that way and they are mirrors for those narcissistic and non-empathetic parts of ourselves, can we actually all come together as community and stand around them and be like, no, I'm not here for your master manipulator games, but I am here to hold your heart. And to not let those games affect me, but to just continue to hold space for whatever you're here to teach us. And when we're coming together as a community like that, I feel like we lead by example in the empathy and the space that we're creating. And that's not to say that we have to continue to integrate these people into our lives, but if we were to try it a different way, like, some tribes, people in Africa and India and stuff like that I've read about, where it's like when somebody is in their sickness, they don't shun them out and make them leave the community. They all come around them and they take them through this dark shadow period of initiation to come back into their hearts all together.
Well, and it would take enough of us healthy enough that have done enough of our shadow work to hold that space. And so empathy be trained? It's interesting, as I was holding up this King of Swords, he's very much about the mind. He's very, on the one hand, on the good side, there's discernment, there's good boundaries, but on the other side, it's something we can't fix with the mind. And what the guides were said to me was, knowledge is power, but wisdom is beyond power. So it's like we're still struggling with the power dynamic here, the haves and the have-nots. And we're still on this treadmill of, what I notice with everyone is while we're still caught in the matrix, and it's interesting, Gigi Young calls this the eighth sphere. And here we have the Eight of Pentacles. While we're still locked into this matrix of survival, of working in a system we don't really agree with for basic survival, and then there's no time to create anything other than that, right? So it's like that our addressing this in a beautiful way is inevitable. We will get to this point, but we have to acknowledge there's a lot of stuff to work through, and we've got to take responsibility within ourselves first. So I guess, Angela, what is being shown in my estimation is that yes, absolutely, empathy can be taught. The healing of these Npc'S that are, as Anita pointed out, just automatic responders, like they're so programmed they don't even realize they're programmed. Exactly. It can be healed. It can be taught. it's going to be a long game,
Yeah.
not a short one.
Yeah. And I see, thank you, Mystic Mimi and Maria. Like right now, I do agree. Like I have actually had to block some people out of my life. However, I don't feel like that is for the long term. I feel like during that space and time, can I call the people together that are in their hearts and are of our community to come around them and hold that space? And I can't predict when that will happen. And so please, with both of you, honor yourself and your hearts and your safety first and foremost, with the possible dream that you are calling in the right support network to be able to hold space for these beings at some point. And if that is your destiny path to do so, so be it. But, you know, these people are coming into our reality for a reason. And to shame these parts of ourselves is unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and also these people, these beings, and this narcissistic behavior and this lack of empathy has actually been programmed into us, and it's just being hammered in all these different ways. And I feel like it's sad that our response to it is to have to exit and pull away from what we've all created.
Look at this. People with narcissism, even, thank you, suffer immensely. Seeking through the behavior to suffer, seeing through the behavior to the sufferer is one of the hardest things to do. Don't excuse that behavior, but look for why it's manifesting.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Precisely.
And you know, I want to talk about just this ancestry component of things for a moment. And Anita, would you please pull a card or a clarifier on how our ancestors play a role, like how working with our own ancestral healing could possibly play a role in re-engaging with our natural capacity for empathy and noticing how ancestry affects like what a person's history has been. It's kind of like they just keep showing me, like it's sort of like drawing a trajectory line, and if you've had all of that history behind you, inevitably it's going to head in the direction of narcissism. So maybe, just maybe, I'm not certain, doing some healing work around what happened in the past could help.
Well, first of all, I did already pull on this when you were speaking, and so I can jump into that. But in looking directly at the question, the way it's being asked here, are narcissistic people NPCs? Well, depending on your definition of an NPC, like we already addressed, we can each be an NPC with our blind spots or when we're overwhelmed, sort of become one. But if we're talking like in the literal sense, do we have filler people in the matrix with us, as we've been told? Is there hope for them? Do they have a soul? Do they not have a soul? That part might be mysterious that we don't know yet. But if we do have filler people, very likely they are programmed to be narcissists to make everything challenging, just like the whole oppressive system has been built for this. So it would be, yes, they can be NPCs, but they can also be fellow humans, as we've already been addressing. How can we help them come out of their shadow? How can we help them come out of their default trauma programming, which we all have, but we all take it differently. So if we're out of it, we don't necessarily know what that was that brought us out of, or why we didn't go on that path of becoming a narcissist. It's like the saying, there by the grace of God go I, right? You know, it having that empathy for them, as has been noted in the comments, is holding that space, but not letting ourselves get dragged down. And people with no empathy being NPCs, I would say same answer. You know, it can be this combo of, yes, perhaps programmed literal NPCs out there, or, you know, people who have lost their way. And Ashala already addressed the empathy being learned part. Now, the first thing that came up when you were asking about this ancestral piece was self-esteem. Yes, that's how it came through for me as well, because it's like, let's focus on our own work. As we frequently say, when we're working with people and in these lives, because it's an inside job. And so it really just felt like, wow, because this is everything that we carry within our DNA generationally. What are these things that we're tasked with working the energy through? Even what Ashala was saying, if this is 10,000 years ago programming, that's long standing, really ingrained deep into our DNA. And so to break out of it is no small thing. And we're deep in it right now, right? That's why, yeah, it can feel so heavy and so challenging. But the more that we can tune into, I do feel it's through our heart, like you mentioned. Even though we're talking self-esteem, which in this chakra deck would talk about the solar plexus, it's still always full alignment of the chakras and the beaming through the heart of our action and our energy. So self-love, self-worth, it's like people, when we talk about people can only love us as much as we love ourselves, because everything's like a mirror reflection. So raise our own vibe, our own frequency, and then bring in the self-esteem, be the light, shine the light for these people who are around us so that they can be attracted to the light, come into the light, honor your beauty here, honor our beauty. So again, that gets into self-love, self-esteem. And then, and it feels like a succession here, expect miracles. So yeah.
Which is what somebody just said here about, I guess miracles are possible, or
Okay, there we go.
yeah.
So, and what that feels like to me is often when I'm working people, I will talk about allow someone to be different every day, just like we would like, so that we're not judging them from past behaviors and experiences. Now, this doesn't mean we throw discernment out the window or we sacrifice ourselves by any means. But what it does mean is that we try to bring in new eyes and new perspectives every day while releasing them from being in that box that we put them in of a label of narcissist, or someone who lacks empathy. Again, it's a fine line to walk because we're not wanting to have ourselves dragged down, but while continuing to shine our light and stay up, can we allow ourselves to see? And this it very much connects to the comments too, where we can see past the trauma or the default programming of what brought them there, and see that piece of hope, and hopefully nurture that out more so that the coat of a narcissist can be shed, can be released.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I agree with one of the comments that it takes professional help to work with a narcissist, and we are so blessed in this time now to have so many powerful professionals stepping in to assist. And I feel like every family system should have a professional on hand to assist in these bigger healing journeys that we need to undertake. I know our family does, and there's no shame in having that as part of the container that is held to work with these people, because I highly recommend not trying to do it all just on your own, or even with your buddy or your best girlfriend or whatever. Like, agreed, seek professional help as part of your as part of that container that you're holding them in, so that you don't have to get so entangled into it. Because and I mean, it is a hot topic, and there's more of it than we've ever experienced. Just like there's more ADHD and disease. Like we're all in this dis-ease place. Yeah,
that's where we are right now. But look where we're headed.
Yeah,
is into Knight of Cups. It's the healing warrior, the warrior of the heart. Like, how beautiful is that? And how hopeful is that? You know, it really is. I feel like even though a lot of people say, oh my gosh, it's getting worse, but no, it's just getting revealed is what it is. It's just getting brought forward. You would think it wasn't worse, like, 800 years ago when they were like crucifying people and burning witches at the stake or whatever, it's like, yeah, no, it's definitely not getting worse. It's just getting, as I say, the psychology of it, the revelation of we can't keep doing this. People could still play in the game back then, but everyone wants out. I keep hearing people say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go on this merry-go-round anymore. I feel like people's egos, their will was still very invested, 200 years ago. And it is not anymore. People are coming to the end of their rope and saying, no, we're not going to keep doing this. And that's because we're in the healing phase. So it's a sign that we're doing a good thing. In our own family work, we notice things that have been just sort of percolating under the surface, not creating a big ruckus, they emerge. And everybody's like, what's wrong? I'm getting better. Why is all this bad stuff coming up now? Well, because we're getting better, because we are coming to a place of healing and restoration. I just want to request, if you have any questions, please place them in capital letters. And also, this is a great moment to remind you to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also, if you would like to book a session to receive some of this wisdom and guidance and support in your own personal healing journey with Kristal and Anita, please check the links below. I have a question about the actual soul in the machine, because to me, what this brings up is, when we're talking about NPCs, they say they have no soul. And AI has no soul, but my understanding of things is that everything has a soul, right? We talk about a rock having a soul. We talk about a grain of sand or a drop of water having a soul. Like, how can a being that has a, flesh and blood body, or a mechanical body for that matter, not have a soul? But what kind of soul? That's the question, right? So I would like to look at that if you're open.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm a little, sorry?
I'm curious about what a soul even is.
Yeah, sure. I'm a little bit of a sci-fi geek, and so I quite enjoy Star Trek. And there very much gets woven in when they get into things that are AI based, of what rights there are for AI beings and what constitutes a soul or a being. That gets addressed often. So I do feel like a lot of the programming out there was, yes, to control us and to oppress us, but that we've had also a lot, especially the more recent things, that have been white hat guided to start to help wake us up and reveal to us certain kinds of thinking. Let's get into what that can be for. Oh my goodness, I have to interrupt myself. I just pulled expect miracles again. I shuffled. I pulled expect miracles again.
Look at this. Yeah, we've pulled some big stuff too. I'm just gonna
tell us.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I mean, we're pulling on what is a soul, and can a soul be created, and expect miracles. It feels like we're getting the answer right away of anything is possible. We just need to maybe further understand the mystery of the parameters of what this is, like God as architect, and we are all mini architects, junior architects, and we do have a lot of power and abilities that we have not yet fully engaged with because we tried to do things separately, as you talked about, Ashala. We pulled ourselves out of the divine matrix to go, yeah, we can do this on our own. But in the meantime, our lifespan got shorter. I mean, we can say it's a little bit longer than the Dark Ages, but shorter from the biblical times when we understand it was hundreds of years that people were living. That's if the Bible's supposed to be a real book and they're talking about Noah being 500 years old, it's like why has that not been a huge topic of conversation? What was different? How does this
Mhm.
weave into the ancient worlds of Tartaria, where people were apparently taller and trees were much larger? All these things. There's so many mysteries
Mhm.
that get wrapped up in all the cycles of the matrices over the years, or of this false matrix.
Mhm.
But and so all of that I feel is relevant to looking at this soul piece. We hear about Lemuria and Atlantis falling because AI or technology. It was a push and pull between control and technology. So
Mhm.
here we are on this precipice again. So we can do it the right way, but we don't know exactly what that right way is. So
Mm.
yeah, so expect miracles. That's the first thing. Um, I'm also third time I've pulled in the root chakra today, as we've been going through stuff, and grounding. That was the first thing I pulled actually before we even went on air, was really getting
Mhm.
into um, again it feeling like repeating discernment. If we're
Mhm.
really truly grounded within ourselves, we are the filter that we are perceiving the rest of the world through. And this
Mhm.
is why it's an inside job. And one of the comments there was, can like a narcissist has to self-recognize, or they have to see it within themselves first. That's the first step. And that's a very crucial piece for us all to remember, right? It's
Yes.
inside job. How can we just get someone to, like, do you want help? Do you want to change? Getting people to that point. And if so, then great. Then we can pull in the
Mhm.
professionals or figure out what's
Mhm.
next. And then the last thing I'll add to the soul piece, I mean, as much as we're going to probably really get into it here, but spiritual abundance. So that feels
Ooh.
like it's unlimited. Again,
Wow.
getting into like the grand architect, God, and also us as mini architects. If we have that spiritual abundance, can we not create a soul? We all had to be created at some point. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying it in a egoic, we don't need God way. Obviously, it's through God, through a higher power source. But can we create something that's truly divine, and that might be a soul, beyond
Mm.
childbirth?
Yeah.
Let,
Wow.
let's see what comes up through.
I can, when you said childbirth, that reminded me that I just happened to catch a tiny clip of Zach Bush talking this morning about a soul, and he was, yeah, it was
Apparently
like the
that's what we're
only
talking
thing I
about.
caught this morning was something about a soul. So I think it's kind of funny. And he was talking about how soul, the term, has been programmed into our reality through spiritual teachers and through religion and all of that kind of stuff. And he's like, but if you look at it from a scientific point, soul is the frequency that surrounds us, that creates the matter that is the human beings that we are.
Mhm.
And when we go, that frequency disperses and goes on to create a new frequency being and a new matter being.
Mhm.
And I didn't watch the whole thing, but you just said childbirth, and he was talking about like the frequency comes in and creates the matter that is that fetus, and then it nurtures it and grows it inside the mother, and then that becomes the soul that follows it and continues to grow it. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting addition, because that's where I was like, what is a soul even? Do we really know? Or do we have the answers that we've been sort of led to believe through all of these different teachings?
Mhm.
And now it's like the miracle is that it is it, um, all of these different aspects, and there's a lot of truth around it, I suspect. So let's
Mhm.
see what this
Yeah.
is.
I want to add one more thing before getting into those cards because of what you were saying is
Yeah.
that one other thing that I have heard over the years is that if there's a really big job for a human to get through on Earth, that it might be a collective of souls. So that can be a
Mm.
different perspective on when we're looking at what is a soul and the parameters of it. Is it like if it's a collective, like that are resonating at a certain frequency or part of the plan, but it's just too much heavy lifting for what we might identify as one single soul in a person. But
Mm.
it's going to take 10 frequency energies, or like more
Right?
looking at it that way to be like, okay, I've got to walk through this difficult path of being Nikola Tesla or Trump
Mhm.
or someone who has just they're so pivotal. There's so much going on that we can get into time travel and all sorts of other things, but
Mhm.
it's a lot of heavy lifting. So
Mhm.
that's another aspect to bring in, like, not just one soul in one vessel.
Mhm.
That's
So cool.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you see in the cards, you guys?
Am I going first again?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we've got, what I see this Seven of Pentacles, like the patience and the perseverance, and it's the spiritual number 7 in matter, spirit in matter. Um, I agree with Anita. It is a kind of a work in progress in a way. And I think the greatest mystery with this high
Mhm.
priestess as part of the advice is that we just don't quite understand the magnitude of it all at the juncture that we're at. It's so extraordinary. And yet when you were saying, we'll create a soul, what I was hearing is that we'll create vessels for a soul to reside in. And I don't necessarily mean like AI machines that the souls enter into. What I mean is like something that is sovereign and created with love. It's about because look at this. We've gone from here we are in terrible grief and going through the human experience of sorrow and trauma and grief and release. And what is ahead of us is reuniting in love.
Mhm.
So, what I've learned in all my studies around the principle of what is human nature, is that we've gone through phases, we've gone through epochs like this in the past, the Judgment card, big upgrades. And I agree with Anita that this turning point is about us becoming more, we had to individuate in order to learn how to see and manifest from an individual level. Because before that, we had the capacity for love and the hive mind and so on, but we were operating as a collective more than individuals. So here we are at this juncture of the high priestess is also about choice and balance. So we're coming back into the frequency of love and how unique the human
It is.
experience is in love.
Mhm.
Like so many other vessels that contain soul energy, if you call soul like consciousness, God consciousness, whatever you want to call that, so many other vessels don't have all the parts to experience deep soul union, right? So it's the unique human experience of we cry, we love, we have capacity for deep empathy and self-awareness at the same time. So we are such extraordinary vessels.
Mhm.
And if we're going to work with soul energy, it's about honoring the vessel. And, this is where it gets into concern for me, is if we're creating machines that are just about functioning, or doing something, or who knows, like robotically, war machines, AI that is like, about controlling our movement around the planet or whatever. It's like you're programming matter, because machines are made out of silica, metal, plastics. All of this was natural. It was in nature. It has a soul, a natural soul, and then it gets kind of hijacked out of nature against its will and forced into these artificial components, and then programmed with whoever's dark energy or agenda or whatever. No, not my cup of tea. I'm not interested. Like, let's start with really honoring the material we're working with. We're working with minerals. We're working with the energy of plants and animals, and and we are capable of designing. I agree. We're capable of designing, inviting soul in a really beautiful way. So look at the future here, everybody. Here we are thinking we're going to figure this out in our minds. And again, it is not going to be a thing we can solve with our intellect.
That's what I was going to say.
It's coming in.
I didn't get the chance.
Well, you're getting it. It's coming in.
She got it.
Through the heart. It's coming in through the emotional body. And that is how we'll know that it's sacred, and it's the very best that we can do as humanity, because to me, it's what makes us uniquely creators in our own right, is this heart center, the love frequency.
Precisely. And this is what Ethan just shared. Humans are one of the only species with such an extensive capacity to create. Creativity is our connection to the creator. With AI, we have created a creator. And that's what made me look at that, like this divine union, first of selves. And then, it takes two to create on this planet as human beings. And that's a very, very specific and special design. We can't do it as one being alone, not yet. Right. And so the creator piece is really powerful. And the fact that it takes two beings to create another being and create a soul is a pretty special job that we are undertaking here. And so to really honor that, the alchemy of union. And then interesting, because that leads into Miss Fiji, does our soul split into into different bodies? That's a curious question. So we'll get to that. Absolutely. I don't know that I really have anything else to say. I feel like, Mom, you encapsulated it pretty good. My addition there, you touched on. So
yeah,
that's me.
Well, that I was feeling with what was it? Was it Two of Cups?
Yeah.
You know what it was reminding me of, because it's got the somewhat of the helix there, right? That it was reminding me of the Egyptian hieroglyphs that we see, the ancient cave drawings, where we can see the DNA being, tampered with, could be, experimented with. I mean, if this is some grand experiment, but it's almost like higher levels of ourselves, or is this all multiple higher selves? Is it ourselves and different frequencies and timelines that are what we connect with when we get source information, when we're reading for people, when we're tuning into ourselves? There's so many layers to this. Are we the ones that did the experimentations on ourselves? I mean, or if not, if there has been an outside tampering, either way, we've been shown how this, there's so many different ways this has possibly gone, or has gone, that it's like, okay, let's just tamper a little bit. What happens here? It's the same way modern science might make a genetically modified food, or testing in medically, can we help with a certain disease through these trial and error pieces. But if we have that really divine, we're all mini architects, again, that's what's coming through today, then it's well, maybe at one point we were, or in a different timeline, or we're more advanced, we bring in some greater
Mhm.
knowledge and have influenced and tried different things.
Mhm.
But we are arriving definitely now in the precipice, or probably well in, we just don't really realize yet, into a new epoch, a new era
Yes.
of well, you talked about Pisces. We are in the age of Aquarius now, though, aren't we?
Depending on which source you look at, we're basically in the transition between out of Pisces for the last 2,000 years, from the time of Christ, to Aquarius. And Aquarius is I believe there's only 2 of the 12 zodiac signs that are human. And Aquarius is one, Gemini is the other. So we're going to be looking a lot at humanity in this 2,000-year cycle. And Aquarius is also about working together as a group, as a collective, for the greater good of all. It is about releasing the ego. There was a lot of ego in all these other eras of like Taurus and Aries and right. The last couple before Pisces were pretty egoic. And so Aquarius is about coming back into the greater good of all, which is so lovely. It's about decentralizing power. Amazing, right? So, and it's about working with futuristic technology.
Yeah.
So it's all together. Like, I feel like we can split and go further into extreme power dominance and extorting I hear extorting the beauty of the human soul of love and the capacity for love that we've been already created in the image of the divine consciousness. We can keep fracturing off, but I feel like a lot of people are going to go another way, which is into healing humanity, and that the really beautiful work of healing our planet, healing ourselves and each other. What I just want to say before we go on to the next question is I've noticed today specifically, all the future cards are looking amazing. They all have love. They all have a lot of healing. They are very, very encouraging. So again,
And
this idea,
I pulled expect miracles twice. So
yeah, exactly. So it does become very discouraging when we're at this point where we're just like, phew. Like Kristal just said this morning, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but
she lay it on us.
She was like, I'm getting tired of all this. I'm just tired of it all. Like, I don't know. I'm a little just
the fullness of the full moon energy, right? When it just feels like we're stretched to our max.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
And yet I came in this morning and I was at our little coffee shop here that we just love so much. And I was overhearing 2 of our favorite girls there. And the one was like sharing something and the other one was like, I don't know. I don't know how to help anymore. And I came in and I was like, can I help? Here I'm still trying to be of service, even though I feel like I'm like exhausted in my life. And it was like, she took 2 seconds and told me what was going on. And I was like, oh, absolutely. Maybe this is the perspective that you need. And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And the other girl was like, well, that's way better than my, I don't know, and it's just like, even still, even when we're exhausted by life or overwhelmed in all of it, there's still these precious moments of being of service and assisting other beings. And it is almost as beautiful of a medicine as figuring it all out for yourself, So just like that, like even when we're exhausted, there's still like silver linings.
Well, we raise each other up, right? We fill in each other's gaps, and that's why we're collective.
You notice how many of the future cards also are about connecting through love and relationships and connecting, like what we're doing, exactly what you said, Anita. We raise each other up. like at this point, and that's the Aquarian energy coming back into group energy. We've had so much separating into separate self, you know, me, I'm the, like, I got to look out for number one, right? And even in the last 50 years, you know, post-war epoch, it was all about the individual rights, and, you know, which is, we've come to the end of those lessons about separation. We got it. We got the lesson. And now we want to heal the shadow part of separation because it's been very painful. And we want to come back into union, into co-creative partnership and relationships. So let's talk about souls.
While
I'm going to
still being sovereign beings.
Oh, right. Sorry. Well, I saw there's another one.
There
too.
is.
T. Lynn is asking, then do people with multiple personalities have multiple souls? Let's look at this. Kristal's already laid it out.
Yeah, I've laid out. Does our soul split into different bodies? And I went for 3. How are we doing? Is our connection all right?
Yeah.
I saw a Wi-Fi thing come up there.
It's better now. It was a little laggy, and then now it feels like it's back.
Well, the souls are just like doing a dance with us here. Souls are frequency. They're coming in and shaking it up for us. Does our soul split into different bodies? It almost looks to me like it like sometimes takes a break or something. Like it's like maybe not split into different bodies. However, I'm curious about whether or not it is completely invested in being there with us, for us all the time, or if it has its own journey of discovery and rebuilding and regrouping and resting to come back and serve us in an even upgraded way.
Okay,
cool.
I just had something come through because this weaves it all together.
Okay.
Now, if all time exists at once, which it is said to be, and it's hard to wrap our heads around because we're so used to linear, but that doesn't mean we can't affect everything. Like we raise our frequency, that sends ripples in all directions of time. But if all time's existing at once, and then that means we have multiple lives, or we have multiple dimensions that we're working with. And if that's the case in this particular now moment, or any now moment, if we're needing to do some heavy lifting in another frequency, another dimension, would we then put in our NPC almost in place, like a space holder, while the heavy lifting and our attention needs to be stronger elsewhere? Like, it's a little bit mind bending, but you know, if all time's existing at once, then the only thing that's truly real is our now moment, then that gets into the complexity of all these different things. Do we send in almost like our own master architect, not like an NPC? I was going to say not quite a clone or AI, but along those levels of like so many possibilities beyond the capacity of our minds to necessarily wrap around, but yet bringing it up allows it to float and expand and bring in more understandings or understandings.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
So I don't know about splitting, but I feel like it's very complex, as we've been acknowledging, as Ashala was talking about earlier, and Kristal now with this, like, there's so many options that it's like, maybe words just don't do it justice. That's what it comes to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, and you know, there's 3 swords hanging on the wall and one below, which is golden. And to me, this is like, maybe there's a part of our soul that stays intact with us, and there are other parts that are movable, that can be in different, like both of you were saying, like that can be in different locations. So it could be that we're there's a part that is, you know, I feel like it also relates to different aspects. Like I believe that we come in with a genetic soul and like spirit soul, and that they weave together. So almost, according to this, it seems as though a quarter at least is our essence that doesn't split. But there are other parts. So we are all getting kind of the same thing, that there are other parts that do split.
Yeah. Yeah. And interesting how we have like all three, like three of the four elements here. And that that it may also depend on how we're like existing and putting our focus. Like if we're really a lot more focused in the material, then we have a different part of our soul that's acting. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Yep.
it's just like it, and as you say, with all the different timelines that we're in, and it's such a beautiful mystery. I love that we're talking about it.
I know.
Yes.
So I'd love to pull. I'm going to pull three more on the second part of the question here. And Anita, if you have anything else to say.
Well, you're going to the next one?
Yeah. Well, wait,
The-
let's
let
hear
you finish on this
Yeah.
one.
Okay. So really what was coming through was, I mean, a lot of more of the same. So I have inner child here, right? So it's in the solar plexus range, that will, but inner child, it's already the implication of, I don't want to say separation, because here we are talking about merging everything. We really only separate things to understand them, like breaking things into manageable bites to go, let's wrap our heads around this and but then we're tasked with bringing it all together back to the collective. And it really feels like it's microcosms of understandings around what we've already been talking about, where Ashala, you were talking about that it's this like the different complexities. So the inner child piece is feeling like an acknowledgement that we have different existences within our awareness and memory. Like, in other words, we are not a child anymore when we're an adult. Yet, are we the same person? Right?
Oh, yeah.
None of our cells are the same. We
Yep.
regenerate every 7 years, or some longer for certain organs. And however, are we even that?
Yeah,
So
maybe
it's an energetic essence, but it's like that inner child, that joyful, open innocence, and our memories of it. But are we that?
maybe we're related, just like our deceased ancestors. Like we're related to our former versions of ourselves. There are relatives, but they're not necessarily who we are at this very moment, right? So therefore, when you move on, like I really feel that DNA and genetics plays into this as well. Like, and again, that gets into the vessel that houses the soul. So as you're saying, Anita, the vessel can completely transform. I mean, you look at a baby and then you look at a, grown adult, it's like that is not the same being, clearly, right?
Yeah.
And yet there is a quality that's stayed there. They're related through their genetics. They have the same genetic blueprint. And then we get into, can genetics change throughout your life? And I think just like your two palms, right? Where you're born with, this is your destiny, and then on your right hand palm or your dominant hand palm is how you play out your destiny, and it changes all the time. Like maybe we actually change, our DNA modifies as we go through life. However, we're still related. We're related to that child, that inner child. That's what I'm getting.
And we can tap into that energy, because when it comes up, and especially this image of this freedom that we bring, that lightness, it's like it feels like so much of what we're doing and raising our frequencies and doing this work is pulling on energy to be like, and sometimes it requires a memory. Let's have a joyous memory come through so that we can bring in that love and light because I'm not feeling it at this moment. I'm tired, or even that
Oh, good
Kristal's
point.
example in the coffee shop, right? And how it required another frequency, another energy to come in to help lift
Mm.
things. And so here we are. What energy can we pull from in our experience, in our cosmos, that we can keep raising ourselves, regardless of what these 3D or denser challenges present as we were rising out of the density? What can we pull on? And
Beautiful.
it's going a little bit away from, does our soul split into different bodies, but it gets into the complexity of
Yeah,
what's
totally.
possible
It does
without us really knowing, does it or not? It's like possibly,
yeah.
but it feels like if it does, that aside from that next part of asking about multiple personalities, to me, I would feel that's more dark energy,
Mhm,
interfering dem- demonic energy,
mhm.
than the possibility of floating. Do we split um, only in the best way? That's what
Mm.
I'm getting. It's like
Mm.
only in the best way, in the best possible way of
Yeah.
the highest, divinest multitasking, so to speak.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's what I see. And I'm gonna, if I could go on this one.
Yeah.
Then do people with multiple personalities have multiple souls? So I'm gonna steer off of that almost a little bit. In looking at the next part of that question, it almost feels like we lend parts of our souls to others to assist. We have two reciprocity and generosity cards here. One of them is around matter, and one of them is around communication and ideas. So it's like, I feel like possibly, yes, and yet perhaps we are lending parts of our souls to other beings to assist them on these journeys out of troubled waters.
Mhm.
And these people with multiple personalities having multiple souls, it's quite possible that their souls are fractured, and here we are judging them for having these multiple personalities, but their souls are going and doing all these different jobs for other beings, and they are actually, there's actually a wisdom in their multiple personalities. And ultimately this lending, like this, even like 60% lending that we might be doing of our souls into these different directions, is actually assisting other people in gathering the tools that they need to come into the whole, which is the I, which is the I am self that we all exist in, the whole. And it assists them in upgrading and gathering the tools that they need to be able to make the magic happen that is human existence. So we've got the infinity symbol up here, that twos, that mastery and balance, and then we have the 2 6s, which is the mastery and balance and harmonization of matter and mind.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
Wow.
What did you put?
Well, I'm pulled all in all directions as to where to start with it, but the mind was what I pulled. Here we're looking at that third eye space. The pineal gland is really that connection space between our physical vessel and the cosmos,
Mhm.
and where we logic a little bit, and to reference it as the mind. It feels like we're perpetually doing this dance between um, bringing through critical thinking, the divinity of having a mind with the capabilities that we have, but also to be able to release that, to not get stuck in the mind. And it feels like when we're talking about multiple personalities, it's almost a mind stick, like sticky ground, and not knowing how to navigate it. So another past experience comes through, or like I said, I do feel like a lot of it is like demonic possession in that has happened. I'm not saying this is all the time, but for someone to step out, and I noticed there was another comment like, oh, I felt like, that there's been a walk in or step in. Well,
Mhm.
it can be both angelic or demonic as well, right?
Yes,
Precisely.
exactly.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we always want to be ourselves, and if we like fully ourselves, and if we get support, then we pray and put out there that it's in the highest of good. Now, if we don't remember, is that self-preservation? Is that protection? I feel the divinity of it would be to remember. So if you're losing a memory,
Mhm.
it feels more on the demonic side that the someone else took control, and it doesn't feel like of the highest good, even though it
Yes.
is potentially self-preservation. But we really must stay in the moment and stay with things. As I'm always saying to people, the only way out is through. If that's
Yes.
the case, maybe that moment is too much, but it does feel like tampering if we're looking at multiple personalities or souls. Um, if that means we forget or we're stuck in the stickiness of the mind, who am I and which way am I going right now? So, what also came through was clear your vibes. So, this is
Mhm.
like get that clarity, and even whether it's in the moment, if we're talking about
Mhm.
right now, or if and something comes our way, or if we're even reflecting on something in the past, because again, we've talked about we can send ripples back, clearing up the vibrations of whether that feels like victimhood or anything that we might self-judge a past trauma as being. If we can forgive that and release that, like forgive ourselves and be
Mm.
able to be like, I was doing the best that I could in that moment with the tools that I had, but we're continuing to build our tools. And then
Mhm.
that comes honesty and communication comes through
Oh,
then.
which is interesting because we
Mhm.
have two communication cards here.
Mhm.
Oh,
Two
yeah,
Mhm.
communication cards,
beautiful.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and very interesting. I see that Angela has made a mention here. One of my teachers was a nurse that worked with person with multiple personalities. One of the personalities was diabetic, but the others weren't. She saw the glucose numbers change in an instant when the different personalities were in. Isn't that phenomenal? And so what I'm seeing here,
Miracles.
it's truly, what I see here is that we have, it's interesting, this piece here where I was getting, we keep a quality that runs with us all the way through. And Kristal's seeing like maybe about 60%. There's a fluidity in where we can go, but I feel like all this communication is suggesting that it's about calling it back, right? It's like you said, Anita, like maybe we do have the capacity to expand and defer something till later, like you were talking about, when people have a trauma in childhood before the age of 8. I see that, I think Tilen said, that, they separate off because they can't handle it at that time. Like what you said, Anita, they can't handle it right then. But I feel like where we get stuck is that we're not taking the time or having the ability or the tools, which is a lot about communication and intention. We're not going back and retrieving their soul pieces. And we talk about soul retrieval is what we do a lot with therapeutic process, right? We're like, we literally can go back through our day and bring the pieces of our soul that we left in places throughout the day. So
Which is what sleep is. That's why sleep is so important, because it is soul retrieval. It's grounding in the experiences and the memories, processing it through our amazing processing system so that we have even better outcomes daily.
yeah,
Yeah, that's precisely
totally.
what this is. And interesting, I actually saw that we lend 60% of our souls out, and then this is the 40% that is continuously that golden ratio.
We can lend it, and or it can be deferred for later. Like it's
Right.
fluid, basically, is what I'm hearing. That portion is fluid. Some of that fluidity, as Anita said, can get us into trouble because it can be fractured off. And if we never have the tools, the resources, the support to go back and heal that, then we don't have that memory. And then this other, whatever it is, soul entity is operating also on a portion of a soul, a complete soul self, right? So yeah, I think this is just scratching the surface in a way, which is very cool. And I think that it's a very powerful exploration. And I love that all three of us have been holding space for the possibilities of understanding and beginning this process of understanding. And it feels like there's a lot of humility here. And with all of you viewers, so incredible. Thank you so much for sharing this exploration with us, because like I've said before, when we do this just amongst ourselves or alone, we just don't get this kind of extraordinary perspective coming through very often. So thank you for the shared energy on this journey. And I'm seeing that we're just over an hour and 10. So, and we just went over 33 people. We're at 34 now viewing live. Number 7, I feel like this is a good time to sign off for the week. I wish you all such a beautiful week. Any last thoughts, Kristal or Anita?
Ethan says, thank you for your time and wisdom, ladies. These live sessions are one of my highlights of my week, and I agree. It is our honor and our pleasure, and it is truly a highlight of my week quite often. So thank you for saying that and for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to add, because what I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the movie Free Guy, and I want to mention it again for those that haven't seen it, because it's very light. I mean, although there is some violence in it, because it addresses video games, so it shows that. But it's a favorite in our household to watch multiple times, because you get extra gifts coming through. So we know that the white hats have stepped in to all the dark programming and hijacked a lot of it back, taken back, so that we are getting beautiful reminders again, like little wake up calls pieces. And it's one of those ones that's a bit lighter, where you can go, oh my goodness, and reflect on all these things that we've talked about today. Where does the consciousness go, and different worlds and all sorts of layers that are involved to philosophize with, to sit with, to reflect upon. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you here next week. Bye for now.
Same bad time, same